Hey, hey, gang. It's 10 o'clock in New Zealand. It's Key Oracle here with the kid friendly mindful moment. The content of today's video is thanks to my birthday twin and her doodle of awesomeness. This was fantastically perfect to deconstruct into the Zentangle Method, but it also could not be possible without special thanks to the lovely folks at Patreon who help us with support of Key Oracle. So thank you everyone who has helped Key Oracle to get to this point, and a mindful moment to share with you. Now today we are going to do a lovely drawing which is created from a few tangles, but it is difficult to get from one to the other. So it's time to review and discuss. So to start with, we're going to just get a piece of scratch paper. And with this scratch paper, we're going to practice some of the important strokes for Zentangle. Remember, there are just 5 strokes: a dot, a line, a curve, a double curve, and an orb. So these are the complete strokes that you need to do Zentangle Art. And with that, we will go on to our first tangle of the day. So for the orb, remember, it does not need to be completely round. But when you place an orb very, very close to another orb, one of the important things is to remember not to draw over what you've already drawn. So this is the concept of drawing behind. Now, this tangle looks like a bunch of, I don't know, bubbles all bunched up. And it's just a whole bunch of orbs really close to one another, and fill in the little gaps there. So this is called tipple. All right, so it is made up of orbs, and sometimes you can put some orbs flying off that don't. But be careful every time you do your orb, be mindful about trying to meet the circle without being, you finish your orb, otherwise it will always have a bit of a wrinkle in it. But wrinkles are good, and sometimes we end up with wrinkles where we don't expect. Now, tipple has a cousin, which I thought was so fun. So if we create a line of tipples, sort of like a line of bubbles here in a row, then we go along and fill in the gaps or along the lengths here with smaller orbs. So it looks like they're all lined up. And then you can do this on both sides. Now, when you finish that, you end up with something that looks a little bit more like a line or a path. Bigger tipples in the middle and smaller tipples that line up along the outside. And you can line up as many many tipples, a longer quipple as you'd like. Makes it sound like Harry Potter verse. So this is quipple, where the bubbles sort of semi-organize themselves into some sort of ranks. Yeah. Okay. So next up is nice. Niceness. I think this is a super duper fun tangle. So the way we're going to start is by 2 lines, sort of parallel lines. So they don't, that's fine. But once we have these 2 lines, we are going to go inside here and do some triangles, some zigzags, or some ends. I know some people like to think of them all as letters. So you look at it as So once we have our series of triangles, the next is we make more triangles. So we are going to create an aura of each of these lines on our we just drew to create a little line of triangles. Ta-da! And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So we aura the in the middle, and you end up with a little shape that fits in the other side. So that's a kind of fun pattern suddenly that pops out. But then it gets even more exciting. We can continue our tangling inside these triangular spaces. So you can do a number of things like put stripes in them, or you can color them in all the way, ink them in so that they're dark and they stand out proud in your design. But either way, that is nice or nice. Awesome nice. Yeah. Anyway, gotta have fun. So one of the tangles we're going to do today is a repeat of one that we've done before. So it is one that often fills in a space. So I'm going to put a funky, weird space there so you see it doesn't have to be with straight lines. But one thing we're going to do here is put a ladybug shape all the way around, like this little line of ladybugs surrounding our space. All right. So once we have our little line of ladybugs, some people like to color in the ladybugs. I sometimes leave that for a little bit later. But you put an aura or a line echoes that line that you just drew. And in this case, it looks a little bit like a rainbow around that ladybug. Yeah. So we're going to continue doing an aura, and this rainbow shape ends up getting stuck to the next rainbows. That's okay. There's no mistake in Zentangle Method. We're just going to keep going and fill in and be mindful of each stroke that we're drawing. What does it mean to be mindful? That's a good question, isn't it? Sometimes for me, I make sure that I am focused on each stroke as I'm making the stroke. Today, I am mindful that I am also talking while I am drawing, which is very atypical for me while I'm actually tangling and meditating. I usually don't talk. But that, if you remember, it was crescent moon. So remember that one from last week? Now, the final one for today's little tangle meditation is a grid tangle. So I'm just going to make a little tic-tac-toe shape. And I didn't do a very regular one, but it just goes to show you sometimes it's regular, sometimes you have a little bit of a surprise waiting for you. So for this, I'm just going to put an X or a line across each of the squares that turned up after I put my grid into place. And you'll see that suddenly we have a very, very different pattern that pops up. And fun, huh? Now, I know a lot of folks who doodle while they're talking on the phone might do something similar to this, or you can just line up. Some people are very organized about filling in every line in one direction first, and then going back and completing the other side. It all depends on how you want to tackle your particular mindfulness practice that day. It's all good, no matter what. So this one is called patina. And those are the tangles that we're going to tackle in today's drawing. All right. Without further ado, now you might be wondering, I don't have the tools for Zentangle. Yes, you do. This is just paper from my printer that I cut into a square shape. I've got a vivid marker today, and it's pretty good for nice big tangling. It can be a little messy for little fingers, so you may want to use a Crayola or something that has waterproof or water soluble ink for the little fingers. So we have our tangles ready to roll. Now it's time to apply the Zentangle method. So take a moment, deep breath. And step one is appreciate and gratitude. So I am really pleased that you're here today and sharing this mindful moment with me and this cool new meditation. So thank you. I appreciate it. Number two is corner dots. And just put a dot in each of the corners of your tile, a piece of paper. Step three is border, and this does not have to be a straight line. Do not use a ruler. I often make it squiggly line because that makes it a little bit more fun and a bit more real. So number three is a border, and number four is the string. So today's string that we're using is a capital I. All right, do you know what a capital I looks like? Now, we're going to do something different with the middle of the I, the top and the bottom. So we're actually going to double up and make it a bit like a tunnel. All right. So with our string, I'm just going to make a bit of a tunnel across my, you can make yours any direction, but two lines that are more or less going in the same directions, okay? Because we're going to make our zigzag lines inside this spot, okay? And so why don't we go ahead and pick up our pen and give that a shot, okay? So we are going to make the zigzags of our nace. Now, I'm trying to be a little bit irregular with this because I thought it would be fun to see how it looks. Now we aura the inside portion, so you have a triangle shape that pops up. And now we aura the other side. Look at that fun shape that's popping out. I'm going to leave my in bits a little bit empty here because I have an idea for next. So hang on a tick for that. So go ahead and connect and pen that. And we have these triangle shapes that we can now fill up with whatever design we so desire. So to start with, I think I'll do some parallel lines or some stripes, really. And I'll fill all of the triangles on one side of my nace shape with my parallel lines. Okay. So it should be different. Why don't we fill the other side up with a different design? I'm going to use some tipple, but you can do anything you would like. You can color them in, you can leave them open, it's up to you. So the next thing, it's time for me to put the top and bottom on my capital I, right? So I'm going to use the Tangle Tipple and Quipple for that. All right, so I'm going to put a line of bubbles along the top. And they don't have to be the same size, but I'm going to have bigger bubbles along the middle and smaller bubbles along the outside, right? But don't forget, if you already drew part of your circle and your next circle is going to be bigger, we pick our pen up and pretend that we draw behind so that we don't end up drawing on top of the orb that we just drew. All right, so it's time for a few smaller tipple along the edges. Oops. Okay. Excellent. Now it's looking a little messy. It's all right. It'll come right by the end. Next, we've got a couple of tangles already under our belt. Let's see here. Should we do the grid tangle next, or should we do the, I think it would be more fun to do the Ladybug Tangle, because I'm going to put my ladybugs on top of the stripes. Can't resist. Okay, and now I've got to put a ladybug over here. Just spread out your ladybugs wherever they fit along the edges of your space. Okay. Next, we'll aura around each ladybug. And on my picture, it looks a little bit like rainbows. Now, this is one of those instances I am not going to stay in my lines. The line sort of, for our tangle, it keeps us in a general area, keep us from straying if the art needs to stray. So. This is filling in pretty quickly. I like using the big vivid pen. Quite effective. Okay. See how they all sort of squish together in the end? Everybody's will look different, a bit wonky, but it's fun. Okay. Now that means we have one spot left, and that one is we were just doing. So, which direction, but we're going to put some parallel lines and some, like a checkerboard to start with. Now, I think I'm going to try to do mine a little bit. Actually, let's stick with this sort of angle. So there are my lines in one direction and in the other direction. All right, so I did quite big ones this time. It's okay if yours are smaller. But for each of these four-sided spaces, they're not necessarily squares or rectangles, but four-sided spaces, we are going to connect both of the opposite corners. So it's a little bit like X marks the spot, huh? And you see that suddenly you have a really cool tangle that pops out at you. And there are a lot of fun things that we can do with this once we start shading. Is it time to start shading? I think so. My favorite part. Okay. I'm just having a little play with this to sort of make it fit together in a fun little way. All right. Ta-da. Okay. Now, it's time for me to grab my pencil and add a little bit of magic to this drawing. Now, we'll go from the same order of the things that we did. And remember, graphite down, we are working with adding shadows. So wherever you draw is going to look further away from you. So for my tangle in the middle, remember nace, I am going to play with these triangles a little bit and make them look really cool. So quickly just add a little bit of graphite here. And watch this cool trick. I'm going to take my finger and watch how that totally changes what that tangle starts to look like. Isn't that cool? Okay. So, shall we try to do the same thing with this? Looks like Swiss cheese on this side. It looks like the cheese is hanging out under a bridge. This is not meant to look like anything, as you can tell. But sometimes when you're drawing, at least for me, it's fun to imagine crazy things about what they do end up looking a little bit like. Okay. So that's a start. Next, I want to have a little play with these bit of graphite down where these things should fall away. All right. But also, I want this to look like it's a bridge going over the top of that. All right, so I'm just going to lay a line of pencil graphite along the edges of that first tangle that we did to keep it separate from the other tangles and makes it look like it's standing out above. All right, now I've gotten sidetracked from finishing up here. Now, this is going a little, we're almost finished, crew. Thanks for hanging in there. So now that we've got that little bit of shading done, we have this patina to play with. Now, in our crescent moon, we put the shading in the middle so that the middle falls away from us. and it looks like the outside edges are closer to us. Let's do the opposite for the patina. Let's shade around the whole space. It's up to you if you would like to shade each triangle in a different way. Go on. I want to see your results, though. No matter what you do, please go ahead and share with us if you participate in this mindful moment and do this meditation again. Every time I play with these tangles together, it looks different. And that's one of the reasons I've been calling this a meditation instead of a class, in that I have so enjoyed the lovely different results every time I play with it. At any rate, we have just done some shading. I'm almost finished with my tipple and quipple. I'm going to have a play with the shadows of the bubbles so that it looks like they're a little bit more 3D than they once were. And again, you can draw on top of the orbs in this particular part of the tangling because the shadows are what makes it pop and looks like 3D. If it's ink, on the other hand, it has a slightly different look and not quite the same effect. Pencil is magic, so this is your magic trick for mindfulness, in my opinion. Now, we have completed most of the steps. We've done step 1, gratitude and appreciate. Step 2, corner dots. Step 3, border. Step 4, a string. Step 6, all the shading. Now it's time to take a moment. Make sure you figure out which way is up for you. I think that way is up for me. And sign your artwork because you are an artist. Step 8 is appreciate again. Thank you for coming to visit with Key Oracle in this mindful moment. Please share with anybody that wants to experience a mindful moment of their own and joining us today. We hope you have a lovely day wherever you are. Drop us a comment to say what you think, and please share your drawing. Participate in this. Share on Facebook, Instagram, anywhere. Tag us. Say mindful moment with Key Oracle. And have a great day. Toodaloo.